You're ready for the red pill? Well, I want to welcome you to the Mastery Skills training that we're beginning today. Some of you will be here for 3 days, and then some of you will be here for 7 days. We've got a few more people that will be coming in here in a little bit, at least I hope so, given some of the stories I've heard about the airplanes yesterday and the tornadoes and things. But glad that you got here. If you'll put your name on the outside of the manual, then you'll know which one is yours when they get misplaced and moved around, and we start making announcements for lost manuals. This is neurosemantics, and if you've got NLP background, this will make, I think, a lot of sense, and will take a lot of your trainings and so forth to the next level. If you're brand new to NLP and neurosemantics, this is a good place to begin. And to some extent, what we're going to do this week is an experiment on my part. I didn't advertise that I needed experimental subjects. Truth in advertising. But it's the American way. Because part of what I'm interested in is always modeling out and seeing what's the most effective way to achieve transformation. My own transformations, my own ability to take my skills, my abilities, my awarenesses, my emotional states to the next level, and for other people to move to higher levels of transformation too. In the past few years, I have been doing APG, Accessing Personal Genius, and then LPG, Living Genius. And we've been doing that around the world, giving people the opportunity to try on those patterns. How many have been through APG, Accessing Personal Genius? So we've got a good number here. We're going to use some of those same patterns in this process. And some of you have been through LPG, Accessing Living Genius. So we've got 3 or 4 of you who've been through that. And over the last number of years, when we've came up with a matrix model, and realizing that it's all about frames anyway, that all the stuff inside of us, everything that you've brought with you today that defines who you are, how you experience your life, the skills that you have, the things that hold you back, the things that propel you forward, are just frames of mind. There's really nothing else in there. Now, psychology, especially as Sigmund Freud invented psychology for the 20th century, he postulated that inside there were certain instincts, like the death instinct and the life instinct and the pleasure instinct and the sex instinct and several other instincts. And so he also postulated that the unconscious was always bubbling up and it wasn't all that healthy. And if we could just bring enough of that unconscious to ego, we could adjust ourselves so that beast within could be contained. Today in psychology, we have a whole different understanding of who we are. And basically, starting from the NLP presupposition that behind every behavior is a positive intent. We're just trying to be ourselves. We're actually trying to discover and to create who we want to be. And we do that through the way we map things. And that the territory out there is really different from the maps we have about it. That the map is not the territory. So that the things I've mapped in my belief frames, my meaning frames, my identity frames, my understanding frames, my intention frames, all those frames are just maps. And some of them will take me wild and wonderful places. And some of them lock me up in prisons and prevent me from experiencing the human needs and the human expressions and the human growth and the human development that's just built within us. As developmental psychology began, developmental psychology traced how as children, we just developed and grew and became more and more of who we could become. And what we discovered, and this is what became the Human Potential Movement, was that we've got all this potential within. Great potential. Unless it's interfered with. Unless it's traumatized. Unless we get stuck at a certain stage of development. But that if we have a safe and loving environment, we'll develop trust, We'll develop the desire to explore. We'll develop the desire to find our talents and potentials and possibilities and just express ourselves. And we'll connect with people and bond with people and have fun and contribute. That development is the most natural thing of all. Just developing, just growing. And that what we've done in NLP and neurosemantics is to discover, for the most part, how to get some of those frames that get in the way out of the way, to stop the interference. And so as a premise, as we begin this week and look at mastery, my belief is that we are wired and designed and created for mastery. That there's a natural passion inside of us to do something and to get good at it. And isn't that one of the greatest pleasures that you have, that when you get good, and it could be getting good at something very simple like gardening, or just writing an email to a loved one, and just feeling good that I expressed myself well. And I know this is going to make that person feel good. And then we feel good about feeling good. That mastery, we're wired for mastery. That the biggest difficulty is not creating mastery, but getting the interferences out of the way. Over the years doing Accessing Personal Genius and the 14 patterns in that training, those 14 patterns essentially reproduce and replicate developmental psychology. And so if you've been through Accessing Personal Genius, you'll recognize that one of the first things we do, and we're going to do this tomorrow, we access our power zone, our powers of mind and emotion and speech and behavior. And just own the fact that I can do stuff. Look, Mom, no hands. I mean, that's wired in. We like to be recognized. That's not selfishness. That's not egotism. That's just, I can do something. I count. Now, parents who didn't get through Parenting 101 put some frames on us. Be seen, don't be heard. Don't think too much of yourself. My dad used to say, don't let that go to your head. And I kept thinking, but that's where I want it to go. So I can think good about myself. And so in Accessing Personal Genius, we did patterns that replicated and reproduced the developmental stages of being able to say no and yes. Because you see that in little children about 2 and 3, no. And that's not selfishness, and that's not stubbornness, and that's not all those frames that we tend to want to label it. That's a child individuating and saying, no, I think, feel, want. And oftentimes as adults, we may have to rediscover the power of no. Because maybe the stubbornness has been beat out of us. But your ability to stubbornly refuse to make yourself miserable as a metastate, to stubbornly refuse to make yourself miserable is a great mastery skill. You know, I could be miserable, or I could just learn to cope and master and get through this. Let's see, misery or mastery? Oftentimes, I ask people, can you say no to that? You know, some little voice in the back of their head is saying this, some dragon is saying, do you want to take counsel of that? Well, no, but it's there. Well, stand up to it. You know, stubbornly refuse to take counsel of that. So our ability to say no is our ability also to say yes, because if you can't say no, how can you say yes? And some parents who didn't get through Parenting 101 again, when a child would say, oh, yes, they would say, now, don't get too excited. It's a cold world out there. You got to keep it down. You'll get disappointed. So instead of teaching us how to handle disappointment, we kept our expectations and hopes and dreams and passions down. We just threw cold water on it so we just survive and be okay. Well, my belief is living life as a human being, the aim should not be just to be okay, but to be everything I can be. And to unleash those potentials within and to find out what excites me. What contributions can I make? What can I do and do well and take pleasure from that contributes and that adds to others? And so as we go through this training, what we're going to do is start from some of these premises that growth is the most natural thing. And moving from the deficiency needs, Abraham Maslow, food, water, air, safety, security, love, affection, self-recognition, self-esteem, deficiency needs. Because when you don't have those, when those are clamoring to feel safe, to feel loved, to feel connected, to feel good about you, that you count, when that's deficient, then there's a drive to fill them. And when you fill them, then you're just okay. But above the deficiency needs, he postulated that there were self-actualization needs, growth needs. Growth needs. I need to grow. I need to develop. I need to become everything I can become. And so once we get to growth needs, it's a whole different story. It's not about therapy anymore. It's not about healing the past or getting unstuck. Now, it's about turning loose. Who's ready to be turned loose? I don't know if the world's ready to have turned loose people on it, but who's ready to be turned loose to go forward? Who's ready to find your passion? Because my belief is that meaning of life is something we create. We discover it from, what are my aptitudes? What are my skills? What's naturally clamoring inside for me to use my powers of mind and emotion, speech and behavior? What's in there if I find that passion? When you find your passion, then whatever you do, it's no longer work. And that's what Abraham Maslow said. He said self-actualizing people, they've lost that distinction between work and pleasure. And he said it's not compulsion anymore, because at the deficiency needs, somebody works to become a somebody. But now, at this level, a person works to express who they are, what they have to give. Whole different motivation. I work to be loved. I work to prove that I'm a somebody. I work to feel safe versus I work to express what's inside and to take my skills, my experience to a new level. So the difference between deficiency needs and growth needs is the deficiency between what we call therapy and getting people up to the now. Because if they're stuck in a loop going round and round in the past, then they need to be freed from that, and there may be frames that's holding them there, beliefs about the past or decisions about the past, some event that occurred, versus people who are present, in this present moment, in sensory awareness, and ready to take their skills to the next level, and who will embrace change. That's another difference. People at the deficiency level will tend to resist change. They want it, but they resist it. Now, if you're how many therapists do we have here? How many people do therapy with people and help people get over the past? So that's one of the things you have to deal with. You have to learn how to handle resistance, denial, and you have to help people have enough ego strength to look at themselves, look at their life, look at the cards that life dealt with them, and then come to cope with it and then finally to master it. And so that's a whole set of skills to deal with that. When we move into coaching, we're really moving into a whole other domain. How many people do coaching here? How many are moving in that direction of coaching people and working with people who are not trying to get over the past so much as just become everything they can become today? So you may be a manager or business owner who coaches as a communication style, or you may teach or do something along that line and teach from a coaching methodology. And what we're doing now is really helping people find their passion and embrace change, embrace ambiguity, embrace disorientation. So that'll be part of the challenge of what we'll do this week here in this training. I'll feel like I've been a failure if you aren't really totally disoriented and confused as hell by the end of today. Because part of moving into the future is that willingness to embrace the unknown. Because that's a source of creativity. Creativity is, I don't know what's going to come out of the mixture, but I'm going to take this, I'm going to take that, maybe throw in a few other things, and put them into a spin and see what emerges, what comes out as a synthesis, what comes out as an emergent property that doesn't exist in the particular parts, but when we put it together, a new gestalt emerges. Because one of the differences between deficiency needs and living at that level of life and growth needs is that when we move into growth needs, we become more creative. And creativity means creative in your mind. Just having lots of brilliant ideas and crazy ideas and wild ideas in terms of how to build a business, how to have a relationship, in terms of how to live your life in the States. Creative in the way you just move through the world. And so it's that creativity that embraces change, ambiguity, confusion, because that's part of that little child of exploring. What else is out there? So the mastery that you may be moving toward, you may not even know what you're moving toward. But you have a sense that there's something calling. There's something urging inside so that you become the best you that you can become. What I'd like to do as we begin is to invite you to find a blank sheet of paper, and it could be just the back of one of these sheets in your manuals, and to write down 3 things that you'd like to get out of this training. What would you like to get out of this training? The first 3 days is on personal mastery. Our focus will be on identifying the matrix we live in, powering up, training inside our matrix so that we can choose the frames of mind that's really going to serve us well, and then loading that so that we can really develop the kind of personal mastery so that whatever specific it is that you're going after, you'll have the mastery and the skills of mastery to do that. The next 4 days will be on some application to relationship and business and leadership. What do you want as you identify as a goal, as an objective, as something you'd like to take from this? It could be an educational thing. I'd like to understand metastates better. I'd like to understand the matrix model and be able to use that. It may be an educational thing. I'd like to understand how to really reclaim all my individual personal powers. It could be something individual like that. It could be, I want to really do that genius pattern and get that incorporated. It could be an application that you want. I want to become much better as a lover, as a mate, as a spouse, as a parent. It may be, I want to develop the skill to handle my fear, my anger, my jealousy, some specific emotional state. Part of mastery is being intentional. Tomorrow we'll talk about intentionality. And I'm inviting you to take an intentional stance right now by what do you want from this? Because if you're clear, or if you at least have a sense of a direction, what do you want that would make your life richer, that would give it better quality, it'd be more ecological and balanced, have more equilibrium in it? If you could do some magic on the frames of mind, what attitude would you like to take from here? Because that'll be one of the other things we'll do. We'll talk about the structure of attitude and how to give yourself a swift kick in the attitude in the next few days. Because there's a structure to attitude. And as we look at the meta-state structure to attitude, we'll be looking at that. To give you some ideas of where we're going to go, on page 3 in your manual, kind of an overview of the 7 days, today our whole theme is waking up to the matrix. We're going to do some waking up to the matrix that you live in and recognizing when and how a matrix of frames may have you and how to get free from that. That may be your outcome. I'm going to get free from some frames of mind, some attitudes that have really sabotaged and hurt my ability to be who I am. Today we're going to talk about state and state management skills. We'll introduce the matrix, do some detection. Tomorrow we're going to be looking at matrix training, and we're going to be powering up in the matrix and being able to access those powers so that you can choose how to build whatever frames that you want to build. So that might be an objective. Tomorrow also we'll talk about the excuse blowout pattern. Some of you have run that pattern so that you're just excuseless. Now you have to be resourceful. Now you just have to go forward and live your life by your passions. We'll do some dragon slaying tomorrow. We'll talk about how these frames can operate like dragons to us. And we can be on the inside, and to me this is one of the most pitiful things about being a human being, on the inside to feel like there's something inside you fearful, dangerous, threatening, and all it is are just belief frames or intention frames or memory frames or imagination frames. But somehow we get inside there and we become afraid of ourselves. So we'll do some dragon slaying tomorrow. On day 3, we're going to do the reloading of the matrix as we look at our meaning-making powers. You are a meaning maker. And as a meaning maker, that means that you have the power, once you can have exit from your current matrix, you have the power to give and to create meaning at will. I've never walked out of my front door and stumbled over a hunk of meaning and said, who left this meaning here? Because meaning is not external. Outside, nothing means anything. It takes a human mind to give and appraise meaning to something. Now that may be shocking in and of itself. We call that postmodernism. That meaning doesn't exist there, it exists here. And as a group of people give meaning, then that shared reality. So one of the reasons I like teaching NLP and neurosemantics is that there's more of us. So the shared meaning. I'm not the only one crazy. I've got other people who are equally or more so. Because we create meaning. And once you claim that meaning-making power, then your life can become so much more meaningful. And meaning is so healing and so energizing. And it creates a sense of vitality and zest and joy and connection. And when you can give, what if you had the ability to give anything and everything meaning that supports you? Because how often do we give negative meanings? So that instead of healing meanings and blessing meanings, we give it cursing meanings, and then we feel bad. Richard Bandler says feeling bad is just extra. Because whatever happened, happened. Feeling bad, feeling good is extra. And if you have the ability to create and construct, put the best meaning on it, then you can feel meaningful, kind of regardless of what happens. And it seems to me that's part of mastery. The lack of mastery is feeling like you're a victim. This happened. It has to mean this because I've heard it is said that it means that. Whereas mastery is, I give it the meaning. So in this sense, your ability to change your matrix is at your command. Once you know what you have. And what you have are frames of mind and language and metaphors and associations and your ability to construct meaning. And so it's at your command, these incantations of growth are at your command once you know how to take charge of that meaning-making matrix. Meaning is the word semantic. So once you give something meaning, whether it's negative, whether it's positive, you'll have a semantic reaction. So if someone says some words to you and you say, they just put me down, they just insulted me, they just criticized me, and you feel bad, that semantic reaction, feeling criticized, feeling put down, whether you cave in with it, whether you get into an aggressive response to it, is because you set the frame, or you bought into the frame, that it means criticism and insult. It could have been they were just they just need a nap. They're just cranky. I like giving it that meaning. It'll be okay. Just take a nap and it'll be okay. That what come out of their mouth and what came out of their mind, what came out of their heart, is theirs. And giving it that meaning, it's theirs. It's not mine. That then I can feel good because I can walk away from them and they can still stay in that, insulting, putting down state, and I can go walk away from it. And they have to carry it with them because it's theirs. So the meanings we give to it, maybe it's just feedback. Maybe it's just information. Maybe it's an opportunity to deal with a hothead or some other cranky person. So now it's my ability to use my skills to deal with that. The meanings we give to it create these semantic reactions. And they're semantic reactions because nothing happens except we thought something. We felt something. So it's neural in that it's in our neurology. And so one of the things you may want to get from this training is to deal with health issues. Because thinking sends messages to the body. Which is why if you watch a Stephen King movie late at night and go to sleep, you may not sleep all that well because you've sent messages. Now, if you believe those messages, you're even in a worse state. Because if you believe them, they're not only messages to the body, they're commands to the nervous system how to feel. Which is why we say, be careful what you believe. Be careful what you believe because it can be a command to the nervous system. And once it's a command, that nervous system is going to try to realize it, to actual life. It's going to try to make it so because it's got this message. But we are the ones who send the messages. So in that sense, your neural semantics is your felt life experience of your ideas. So if you've got the idea that you're worthless, you'll never amount to anything, you just better kind of play it safe because they're out to get you, your neurology will make that so. And it's interesting. You can be around a person like that, and you can kind of pick up that vibe of the matrix they're living in, that paranoid, fearful, scared, running scared matrix that they live in, because those messages as commands have put them there. So we're going to be working with our neural semantics and going into our matrix to discover how is it constructed and how have I either bought into something or constructed it myself and how can I reconstruct it? So you may want you set a goal for some health outcome. It's been said that 90% of the people in hospitals are there because of some kind of a stress factor in their life. That the psychosomatic, and psychosomatic is just another word for neural semantic, psychosomatic, that the psychosomatic experiences are as much how the person thinks about things and whether they're staying in resentment and hatred and regret and dread and guilt or shame or sadness, living in a negative emotion. It's not that negative emotions are bad. Because negative emotions is just like the brake of your car. And it's just your ability to look at, something I need to deal with, something to look, listen, pay attention to, make a response. It's just a negative emotion. I want them. But if I take them and set them as my frame, so that the guilt becomes a frame of mine, it's not that I did something that I need to make some adjustment, did something wrong, but it's I'm wrong. It's not that I lost something, I'm sad. It's that life is sad. And I'm a sad person. It's when we set the negative emotion as a frame that we're really turning our negative energies against ourselves and putting us at odds and really abusing ourselves. So we'll talk about that tomorrow, how to welcome the negative emotions. And this is some of the paradox, some of the counterintuitiveness of your matrix. The very solution to many of the difficulties that we experience as humans, sometimes the very solution is the most counterintuitive thing that you would ever think of doing. So someone who is fear-driven and dominated by terrors and paranoia, the last thing they would do is to welcome in that fear and to look at how it's valuable. Because as long as they fight it and say, don't be afraid of that, it just makes... So as we've been working with people, Bob Bodenhammer and I have been working with people who stutter. We've met some people who've stuttered for 30-some years of their life, 40 years of their life, and they're so conscious of every little word and how they phrase it, and their frame is, that's bad. They've taken just speech and they've made speech bad and dangerous and part of their identity, that if I misspeak, somehow I'm inadequate. Well, once you set that frame, then you'll try never to misspeak. So I've talked to some stutters, and they talk like this, very carefully. And after a while, I'll say, stop it! You're driving me crazy. Because disfluency, I'm going to welcome. And they hate that. Disfluency, stuttering. Yes, every morning I want you to get up and for 5 minutes, stutter intentionally. And if you can do it to a small audience, do it to a small audience and have fun. So what they have done, avoided all their life, now we're inviting them to do. But if they can turn it on, it's theirs. And they can turn it down. So some of the solutions that we'll come up with for healing your matrix, renewing your matrix, changing, transforming your matrix, will be the most counterintuitive thing as you welcome in the very thing you fought. But the problem was the fight. The problem was the fight itself. And then all your beliefs about that and how that built up a matrix. As we begin this morning, I guess you know that you were born in a matrix. You know that? You were born, like I was, in a matrix of meaning. It was called family system. It was also language system. It was also culture, religion, school, race, national culture. That these were frames that we were just born into, and people told us what things meant. Well, they started by labeling things. They labeled us. Good boy, bad boy, precious, can't you use your head? What's wrong with you? And so they started using words, and we were induced into a matrix of frames of mind. And for most of us, it wasn't until we were in our teenage years, maybe our 20s, maybe our 50s, that we started waking up to the fact that these are just frames. And that's what the matrix is. A matrix is a matrix of frames. It literally means womb. It's a place where something is born, something is given birth to, something is conceived. And so you can have a matrix of just two axes, two ideas, and inside there is given birth, is a womb for a concept or an idea. So a matrix, when we talk about a matrix of frames, is really a place where our reality is given birth. And very similar to what one of the Gospels says in the Bible, that in the beginning was the Word. Our psychological life also begins with words. And that's why the linguistics and the semantics part of it is so crucial, because we are a class of life that when we say something and when we believe in those words, it becomes so. So one of the powerful things that you'll get as a skill of mastery is the ability to recognize words are just words, just maps, just linguistic maps. They're not real. So if I use some words, and sometimes I'll use words in a provocative way to see if I can get a semantic response, because I want to see what's going on. I want to see what matrix is there. And as I do that, if you know that it's just words, that'll begin your pathway to taking that red pill and coming out of that matrix and recognizing it, detecting it. So the frames that we set and the fact that we were born in a matrix, recognizing your matrix is really the first skill, and it's the skill that we're going to be focusing on today. I do want to just kind of get a sense of who's here and where you've come from and some of the skills that you've brought here. How many have been through NLP practitioner course? Okay, good. We got almost everybody. How many have been through Master Prac? Okay, so we got quite a few very skilled people here. How many is brand new to NLP? Do we have any NLP virgins? Okay, good. A couple little hands like that. Fresh brains to play with. Experimental. So, where was I going? Oh, experimental. To come back to that, what we're going to do is to pull together a lot of the things we've been doing in the Accessing Personal Genius that introduces metastates and the LPG, as well as the basic NLP. We're going to put in things from Frame Games and the Matrix. And putting all this together, my hope and my desire is that we're going to streamline the whole process of transformation. And so that's our design. So does everybody have at least 3 things that you want to obtain and to get from this training? Okay. What we're going to do, we're going to divide into 5 groups, 5 teams, and we want you to go to that team and to share your 3, because as you share that, you'll get some other ideas. And feel free to steal. We do a lot of stealing in NLP. Oh, I want that one. That's mine. So that you can have an idea of what you want out of this. And because your intentionality as to what you want, and as you get more clear, and you may not be real clear, it may come in the next day or 2, but it'll also come as you talk to other people in the room. So we're going to go into the 5 groups, and with your team, you'll share the 3 most important things that you want, and you'll hear what some of the other people are wanting out of this training. So what I'm going to do, so that we have males and females in every group, I'm going to have the females number off 1 to 5. I've been waiting for some cell phone to go off, because whoever's cell phone goes off is the next person to volunteer to come up. but it's on vibe. That's right, there's waiting for it. Somebody call me. We have several people here from quite some distance. We've got 2 or 3 people from some other countries. I think, Burl, I think you're probably the furthest from, and you're from United Arab Emirates. So, and you flew 44 hours?
Well, that's because I got my luggage.
We have somebody else from the Netherlands. So we're glad to have you from the Netherlands. Tell me how you pronounce your name.
Apollonia.
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 Seems to me there was somebody else from out of the country. Canada. Well, that's not too far away. So from Canada, from Vancouver. Okay. Anybody from the foreign country of Texas? Soon. We've got people from Washington, D.C. area. Anybody else from Washington, D.C. area? Seems like we had somebody else. Okay. Minnesota. We've got a couple of Minnesotas.
California, now known as California, according to Arnold Schwarzenegger.
California. We got several from California. Everybody from California? So we got quite a few from California. Where else? Where have I not mentioned? Florida. We got a couple from Florida. South Carolina. Another Florida. Washington State. Arizona. Indiana.
North Carolina.
North Carolina.
Not that north.
Not that north. And then Colorado. Okay, we got it.
I can claim that too.
Okay. Well, let's just jump into the subject of what is the matrix. And a couple pages over, you'll see some of the information there. A matrix, as I mentioned, is a womb. It is a place where something is given birth. And how we as human beings experience our matrix of frames is that something happens in the external world. And when that happens, we have this incredible ability. It is a semantic ability to track it inside. So something happens, and it could be somebody calling us names. It could be one of the flights last night. Several of you had to fly back to Phoenix or fly to Kansas City or Circle. Something happens, and we have this ability to bring it inside and to represent it, to represent it on the screen of our mind, to see it again, to hear it again, to maybe even step in and feel it again. We've got a movie in our mind, or at least it so seems. We really don't. Because what we actually have are just, the neural pathways and chemical and ions being released between the cells. But it seems like inside we represent the world. And so we have this ability to bring inside all kinds of things and to create a cinema out of it. And so that is the beginning of how we start to create a matrix. Now, we weren't born with that ability. And any baby that you've seen, when a newborn baby is there, out of sight is out of mind. Because what's in sight is not in mind, not yet. We call that constancy of representation. Before that, a baby you can play peekaboo with. And it's wonderful to see a baby play peekaboo because out of sight is out of mind. And when you move it, they have a cognitive jar. Where did you come from? Now, I don't know the last time you and your lover sat on the couch doing... Because it doesn't work with us, or at least most of us. Now, there may be some different. But most of us, it doesn't work with because I know you're there. Constancy of representation, your ability to remember, to see, to hear, to feel, to smell, to taste, the things you have seen, heard, felt, that the senses, the sense receptors of eyes, ears, skin, nose, mouth, the sense receptors, somehow we have a sense of reproducing it in our mind so that we can carry the world with us. So we represent. This was the genius of Richard and John as they invented NLP, really. Because this is the language of the mind. That the external senses are represented inside. And when you do that, when you create this cinema, if you make the cinema bigger and more intense, eventually you can enter into that cinema and it seems like you're there again. And it's an easy thing to do. Think about a time when you were on holiday on the beach and you were listening and watching the waves come in and you could smell the salt air water of the ocean and you could hear the crashing and maybe it was very intense that day and you could feel the white sand between your toes. It doesn't take many words and we go somewhere and we're inside that movie of the mind. And when you do that, you're in trance. So trance is the way we think. It's the way we experience our lives. We call that our movie mind. And so much of your mind can be managed now and your states by managing the cinematic features of that movie. Let me make it closer. Let me make it bigger and brighter. And let me now smell it and taste it. And as we use our senses to make sense of things, we have a richer experience. Because what happens with this movie is that it sends signals, messages to the body. And of course, the more we go into state, now in NLP we've got some special language. We're associating into it. Or we're dissociating out. Well, we don't need that. We just need to talk about stepping in the movie or stepping out. We need to talk about the visual, the auditory, the kinesthetic, the olfactory, the gustatory senses of how we can turn up the cinematic features so that how dramatic is your internal world is really dependent upon how much control you have over those switches, as it were. And so while we weren't born with this ability, we develop the ability pretty soon in life, like 9 months. We have the ability to represent and hold it constant. Oftentimes we forget it then and just assume that our internal world is the way it is. And what we have found in NLP is that we can now turn that thing up, make it bigger, make it brighter. We can, if you're weak in any system, visually, auditorily, you can start snapshotting and making your internal world richer. And when you do so, you're going to make your internal experience more dramatic. Richard Bandler calls this Sensorama Land. Because you've got a movie that's unlike any other movie that Stephen King, Steven Spielberg would drool to have. Because we can talk about a bowl of strawberries. Rich, red, juicy, ripe strawberries. I hope nobody's allergic to strawberries here. And you can bring them up to where you can almost smell them. You can put one of those strawberries in your mouth and just bite and let it start drooling down your chin. And if you can smell it and taste it, and the whipped cream, of course, you know, who's ready for lunch? That it doesn't take much to affect our matrix of the mind. And this matrix can be activated by anything. Because you know you're hallucinating, because there's no strawberries here. I'm just saying words. And yet, I have said those particular words in groups before and have found somebody who had an allergy to strawberries and start breaking out. A semantic reaction. So the movies you make in your mind is the beginning of the matrix. But there's so much more to it than just the movies. This is where, to some extent, and this is not a fair representation, but to some extent, this is where NLP ends. Because there's so much more to your matrix than just your movies. This is the genius of NLP, running your own brain and managing your own state with that movie. And so much of NLP is about what we call submodalities, these cinematic feature things. Actually, they're not sub at all. Actually, they're a frame. Because you can take a movie of some time that you had some real pleasure. Something that it doesn't have to be a big pleasure. It's just a small little everyday pleasure. Maybe having a cup of coffee in the morning. Maybe having a glass of wine at night. Maybe playing with your dog. Maybe taking a walk. Maybe looking out over a particular scene that just delights you or listening to certain music. Pick a little pleasure. Notice how you represent it. Now, do something with your visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Do something with these senses so that it's richer for you. Make it more so. In sound, maybe the sound coming all around, or the picture, or whatever it is, doing something that makes it more intense, it turns it up. Because you've got the picture, and now you're operating at an editorial level, you're editing the movie. You almost have to step out to notice the movie, and then make some adjustments, step back in. And as you edit your movies at that editorial level and doing different kinds of things, and the more you pay attention to this, the more skill you'll have in doing this, you're at a meta level because you're responding to that movie in your mind. But what else could we do? What do you believe about that pleasure? Do you believe that's good? Do you believe that's important? Do you believe that's helpful? Do you believe that makes you more resourceful? As you think about all the beliefs that you can bring to it, you can now respond to the construct itself, which is the movie. You can now respond to it with higher frames, belief frames. And what do you believe about the movie? What do you believe about yourself experiencing that movie? What do you believe about your experience now to the world and what that does in terms of your skills, your abilities to respond to the world? So your beliefs about all of that, maybe you'd like to make a decision. Maybe you'd like to decide, you know, from an intentional point of view, from a choice point of view, I'm going to play this movie in my mind until I have ready access to it, until I can just step in there and have that pleasure. Because pleasure, delighting my body with just a basic pleasure, is a relaxation response, and it's healthful. I'm going to. So what you think and feel about the movie, what you decide about the movie, what you intend about the movie, maybe you could bring a frame of identity to the movie. So every thought and feeling that you have about the movie is a metastate, is a metaframe, is another logical level of your mind that you can start making whatever is in that construct, the movie, richer, fuller, more solidified. So what I have in the manual is our set of meta questions. I'm going to skip a few pages over to the meta questions, page 13. So that as a skill for handling your matrix, page 13 makes a list of 26 different questions you could ask or statements you can make, 26 logical levels. Now in NLP, Robert Dilts has done us a real service in identifying 3 levels or 4 levels of logical levels. But what we've done now is to recognize that it's the logical levels that creates, and I'm going to use a real technical term, your psychologics. So here you are, minding your own business, playing some movie in your mind about something, and of course, as you play that movie, it puts you into state, some kind of a state. If you're playing a pleasure movie, you'll probably go into a pleasure state, a light, delight, joyful state. But now we can frame it, and this is what the matrix is, just all that framing. What does that mean to you? That's the first question here on page 13. What does that mean to you? What other meanings could you give to it? What meanings would support this even further? What do you believe about that? How have you framed this? What frame of mind does this lead to? What's your conclusion about that? What's your generalization about that? What do you now realize about that? Do you have permission to have this fully and completely? Any parts of you object to having this? Are you fully aligned with that? What do you feel about that? Do you appreciate this? What is of value for this? What significance does it hold? Have you made a decision? And so you can see each of these logical levels is a frame, is a belief frame. So in that sense, it's beliefs all the way up. It's frames all the way up. It's metastates all the way up. And all of these are just different ways of looking at the same thing. Now that's the trick. So page 12 has that diagram of the diamond. If this is experience, positive or negative experience, experience that you've tracked from some event, and now you've drawn conclusions and drawn feelings and brought states to bear upon states and beliefs to bear upon beliefs. If this is experience, we've got 26, minimally, facets for looking at it. We could look at it from the question of meaning. What does this mean to you? Okay, it means that. What does that mean to you? Okay, it means that. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to you? What's important about this? Oh, that's important. Well, what's important about that? Oh, well, what's important about that? So that's important. What's important about that? We could take any one of the, what do you believe about that? Okay, you believe this. What do you believe about that belief? What do you believe about that belief? So we could take any one and go up those ladders, or we could start mixing them. What do you believe about that? What does that mean to you? What do you feel about that? What do you remember about that? What do you imagine about that? What's your intention? Is that who you are? So if this is the experience, and the diamond of consciousness is that diamond that allows us many, many ways in to the matrix of your mind around something.
So how do you decide which one and how to go?
This is
what's the dynamic there?
So the question is, how do you decide which one to go? And the answer is, it is so dynamic that as you go through one facet, what does this mean to you? It doesn't mean anything. Well, what do you believe about it? Oh, I believe this. Oh, you believe that. And what do you believe about that? I believe this. So what do you believe that? Well, I don't. That's just the way it is. Is that important? Yeah. How is that important to you? What's the value that has to you? So what this does, it enables us to never get stopped by a client. Because we follow their energy. And you can use some of these more specific ones, like what do you believe about that? What's your intention? What's your decision? What do you remember? What's your imagination? Is this who you are? No, it's not who I am. Oh, okay, so it's not who you are. How do you experience it? It's just something that's very meaningful to me. Oh, okay, so it's meaningful. So what does it mean to you? So we follow their energy around that diamond of consciousness to go into their matrix to understand, how does this work? Now, the psychologics is this, that we have an experience, let's say anger. What do you believe about anger? Oh, anger is dangerous. Oh, you believe that? Anger is dangerous. Yeah, you wouldn't like me angry. Oh, I wouldn't? Well, how come? Are you a son of a bitch or something when you're angry? Just a question. Would be now. So we ask a question. So when you're angry, then you're kind of obnoxious. Well, yeah. So anger means what to you? Well, it's dangerous and it's threatening, and I lose control. Oh, so you believe that you lose control when you're angry. So anger is a member of the class, member of the category of losing control. Ask someone else, what does anger mean to you? Well, it's just an expression of something that's threatening to me. So it's a member of the class of things that could threaten me. Yeah, it's a member of the class of things that could threaten me. Ask somebody else, what does anger mean to you? Well, anger means I need to more fully express myself. Oh, so it's a member of the class of assertiveness. Anger, what does it mean to you? Anger means that something is hurting me, and I need to talk to someone, but I need to talk to someone in a very respectful, considerate way because they mean a lot to me. So anger is a member of the class of respect. So however you frame it is going to be that to you. So we can metastate our anger. How would you like to frame anger? Well, I'd like to frame anger as just an emotion. Do you believe it's just an... Yeah, I believe it's just an emotion. If it's just an emotion, what would that mean to you? Well, it needs to be looked at and figured out if I need to do anything about it or not. And if you looked at it and just figured out if you need to do anything about it, what would that mean? Well, it would mean I'd be in control of my anger. And so up the matrix we go around anything. And that creates psychologics. So with a matrix, we can really say, you're not logical, but you're psychological. You wouldn't be here unless the experience of learning had been framed with joy. Everybody really have a lot of fun learning. But we know that probably most of the people on this planet don't frame learning as joyful. A lot of people frame it as boring. And so you get them to learn, and they go to sleep. They pick up a book and go to sleep because they're so bored. So the psychologics is that it's a member of the class of boring things, or nerdy things, or the last thing I would want to do on the planet Earth. But if it's a member of the class of joy, and you have the experience of joyful learning, then you can almost not learn. In fact, you'd be the kind of person who'd walk past a book and go, what does that say? Because learning is joy. We'll open the bookstore a little bit later. So what are your psychologics? What makes you tick? What does anything mean to you? Well, it's how you framed it. And now we can start exploring those frames, because we can ask these 26 different sets of questions in any kind of order, and if some place just doesn't get you in, then just ask another place. Now, of course, all of that is in the context of relationship, because you're not going to let me in your matrix if you think I'm going to be hurtful or ugly or disrespectful. So that's where pacing, that's where rapport, that's where honoring somebody. You will open up your matrix and respond to those questions. And so it's in a relationship, we'll open up our matrix as to how our internal world works and the meanings we've given to something. So a matrix is a womb, a place of where we give birth to ideas and feelings and experience. And now we have a way in so we can see the psychologics of how it functions. So the first premise is everything makes sense. So think about somebody that you relate to, that's hard to relate to, that you constantly scratch your head and wonder, what rock did they crawl out from under? What planet did they grow up on? And now, as you look at them, think about this. Everything makes sense. In their psychologics, somehow it makes sense to them. Because they have set certain different frames. The question is, how does it make sense? And what sense does it make? And is the sense, the meaning, is it useful, productive, enhancing, empowering, limiting, sabotaging, confusing, hurtful? So we start asking, after we ask the meaning question, we ask the usefulness question and the ecology question. But the first thing is the matrix itself. The matrix is a set of frames built around anything. And that's what we do as we live and think and move. We cannot not do that. So a little boy goes to school and he's visualizing what the teacher is saying. She thinks, the meaning she gives to it is, he's not paying attention. She slaps his hand with a ruler and says, you pay attention to me, or you're not going to get anything out of this. You'll fail. You'll be worthless. You'll be useless. You'll be inadequate. Post-hypnotic suggestions. So he goes home that night, and Mom says, how'd school go? And, of course, in comes this video. And he starts drawing conclusions. Didn't go well. I hate school, or I hate my teacher, or I am stupid, or they're better than I am. And now a matrix starts to be created just around a simple little event. One of the things I would suggest to you is that most of us have built matrices around those kinds of little, actually insignificant, hurtful events. And it's kind of like an oyster who gets a grain of sand and starts to build the pearl. We get a little grain of sand, but we, instead of building a pearl, we build a gallstone. Something that undermines our health, undermines our wellness, and we build this thing, and after a while it is so big, we just assume that's the way it is, that's reality, that's who I am. But it was all built around some event. It was an insignificant event. And the best events, when someone said, you did that really well, good on you, I'm proud of you, and we just noticed it, and we didn't go home and play that video. And we didn't build a matrix around those sparkling moments of our lives. We built matrices around the hurtful little events. And they grew and grew and grew because they became our frames. So one of the best ways to identify your matrix and to start reloading it, changing it, stepping out of that matrix, is to recognize it was just frames. And with a 3-year-old mind, I was doing the best kind of thinking I could with a 3-year-old brain. And with a 15-year-old brain, I was doing the best kind of thinking a 15-year-old with all the hormones running through the body could build at that time. And I was doing the best kind of thinking I could with my 30-year-old brain. That as we're kinder, gentler with ourselves, we just build a matrix. Now we can step out and ask, is it useful? Is it enhancing? Is it empowering? Does it really serve my life? Do I want to keep living in this matrix? So a matrix. Let me stop and make sure everybody's with us as far as what is a matrix.